I'm an architect, and I specialise in conservation. However, there's so many different things to cover, so I'm going to try and keep it quite focused here. So this is the website and my contact details and everything. And I know that a couple of people who are here today have actually participated in some of the courses. So Life Site Learning is a program that has been developed that we're trying to use existing buildings as a learning source. So bringing them buildings back to life. But first of all, I'm going to tell you about my role as an architect and how I actually got interested in conservation. Now, when people think of conservation, it's like, okay, so they look at old buildings, and it's not necessarily that. It's actually looking at conserving something, so understanding the building, understanding the site, and the story. So it's going back to what's actually been said in the previous presentation of understanding the story in the site and how to bring that forward in the craft. So I believe as an architect, you've got to have an understanding of the built environment, what's been done, to be able to propose something to move forward. So what does an architect do? And I think this is the same in a lot of different professions. The architect wears a lot of different hats, and you can go down different specialisms and different routes. And what a great website to go and look at is the RIBA, it's the Royal Institute of British Architects. And there you have a number of resource that kind of tells you the routes of how to get into architecture. It actually took me 10 years studying to get where I'm at today, but along that road, you know, it's been such a fantastic journey of a lot of different educational routes, and I'm still learning, I'm still taking courses. So, you know, university, first of all, I started off at college. I didn't do the usual A-levels route. I actually went to college and did a BTEC in construction, and that kind of led me on to architecture. So there's different routes into architecture as well. So architecture at university, you do, you know, look at these skills, these transferable skills, so drawing, model making, rendering, and learning how to design. But I also went and worked at a company called Star Architecture, who were a conservation practice, and that opened my eyes onto on-site works and looking at church buildings and how to read repair works and understand the actual materiality. And a big thing for me was this: I was curious of how things were put together. So I then branched out and thought, okay, well, I need this site experience, and particularly being a female in the construction industry, I found it quite difficult of getting any on-site experience here in the UK at that time. I mean, this is quite a while ago now. So I reached out and looked at different organisations that provide training on-site. And I know that I was looking to be an architect which designs building, but I wanted to understand the craft so I could design things better. So this is actually from the Princess Foundation in Intbau that actually do provide courses abroad, and this was in Transylvania, which was a fantastic opportunity, and we worked on a fortified church, and I getting hands-on experience and learning how to do all these fantastic things. And then I went to Malaysia, and this was a different type of conservation. So this is actually using existing materials. And this building that you can see here, this is actually just a shelter that I did on a 3-week camp before I was stationed there. And we used driftwood to stack, and we used bottled, like the bottles that were found on the beach. And, you know, everything that we used here were reclaimed materials, apart from the roof, which was an undulate material that we got imported. But this was on a tropical island, and we designed and built it in 3 weeks, just with our own bare hands, with no electrical tools. It was all hand tools. So this is actually looking at different ways that we can use sustainability in a different sense. And then this is another project that I worked on, again, using a different kind of cultural heritage. So looking at conservation and cultural heritage and experiencing these different elements in different parts of the world. So this is a roundhouse in Slovakia, and again, Grampus do these, Grampus Heritage do these courses, as well as Architrek, which do fantastic on-site hands-on courses. So then when I came back to the UK after all of these ventures, which I haven't put as many on, but I started looking at the built environment of where I was from. So I'm from Yorkshire. I'm currently based in the south, in Hertfordshire. But I was looking at, like, this building in particular is a mill building that when I was a kid, I used to get on the bus to school and I saw this rundown mill, and I was like, and even now it's underused, like it's empty, and it's had fires in its life, and I was like, what can we use these buildings for? And seeing all these skyscrapers built up, and I just, as an architect, well, training to be an architect at the time, I was thirsty for looking at reuse and how we can, the story behind this heritage that we do have. And then, like, this is just some facts for you to kind of mull over. So in 2019, according to government figures, you know, there's over 640,000 unused buildings in the UK, which is, to me, seems absolutely bonkers, you know, and I'm like, well, what can we do with these buildings? And I know with sustainability and different focal points has been spoke about in other slides before, is that, you know, how much money and time and energy does it take to upgrade these buildings to be usable? Over 440,000 being homes, 172,000 being commercial. Now, in the UK and England, you know, and in all over the world, you have different buildings that are of special interest, and they tend to be listed. So with listed buildings, you have different grades, and with these listed buildings, you have different restrictions that come with it. So the higher the grade, you know, the more sympathetic that you've got to be, and that's to think about the special interest that they carry in them buildings. And we've got quite a lot at risk, so are underused, and they're registered to be special because of the quality that they hold to our heritage. So at the time, I was like, right, well, why can't we use these existing buildings? Maybe if we can't inhabit them completely and upgrade them, why not use them as a learning source of what I've been doing? And I wanted to share that knowledge with other people. Some examples, like here, I'm just sharing some information here. And once you start looking at the actual detail of a building, you start learning more about the story. So this in particular piece here, I actually found this on a job when I was working with Star Architecture, and it's a end of a timber truss. And from the outside, you can't, you know, you can see the shell there, you can see the edge, and it looks completely intact. And it's not until you get it down, you can actually see that it's hollow part of the way through with the wood. And you wouldn't necessarily know that was happening from inside of the building. So when you start actually having a look at these types of things, and this was actually caused by dry rot, which starts from the inside of the wood and eats all the way through it and actually can keep the shell of the material intact. And that, to me, fascinated me, because I was like, oh, wow, I have to think about these materials, putting them into buildings, and understand the materiality and the reactions that it has to the environment, to be able to propose new buildings in the new environment. So it was extremely important to me. So I thought, right, well, I need to learn about this more. And at the moment, I'm doing a course in wood conservation that's being held in Norway. So I'm still learning. And this is another example of dry rot and how to recognize that. You know, so dry rot is a fungus, and that spreads through the building, and it breathes off different conditions within the building and the material, depending on the humidity, where the water comes in, if the water's getting trapped, and what materials that are next to different materials and how they react in certain environments. And another example here is a piece of wood what has been attacked by dry rot, and you can see how the woods reacted to that infection there, well, infestation of dry rot. It starts to get cubed, so you can start these telltale signs of materiality. You can start telling by the reaction of the material, and you can start learning that through experience. So the biggest thing for me is, what is the story? How to read a building. And with my job and my experience, it's learning. Anybody can do it if you start learning these little nuggets of information. For example, here you can see the truss. This truss compared to the other truss. So this truss here is a king post truss, and the next truss here is a queen post truss. So it's these little bits of nuggets information that you can start understanding. Okay, well, this is this type of truss, and this is this type of truss, and it all adds to the story of the building and why it was built and how it was built. And one instance, I was working with this, again, star architecture, and this image here is the before and the one to the right is after. There's not much difference, but that was good because this is actually a museum and they wanted to keep the aesthetics of the building. However, they needed to improve the thermal qualities of that space, and not only the thermal qualities of that space, but remove elements that was actually causing the building harm. So this, a crafted technique under here was the torching or the firing underneath the slates here on the roof. And we actually worked with craftspeople and specifiers to understand that actually the best method and way forward was actually to apply a lime slurry to the underside of these slates, and that would a putty, so that would actually an old technique which you added hair to the lime mix, and it actually adds a thermal quality, but it allows the building to breathe, and that's what these types of construction were made to do. They were made to breathe. So, and another way of reading the buildings, of one of the projects that I've done more recently, is how do we record these buildings? How do we record our readings? And one instance is actually taking a photo and tracing over it and start identifying things that you can see on the building, that it's almost like being a building investigator. And once you can understand of how to read a building, you can then understand how to approach a site and understand how you would implement different design improvements or changes to those buildings. Another example here of how you can see the different materiality in time, where the fashions in materials have changed. So, you know, cement came along at a certain point of time, and everybody started cladding the stone. But if you don't use it in the right places, it actually accelerates the deterioration of the building. So having an understanding of where to put certain materials to make the buildings perform better. So going back to life site learning, we decided to make a summer school, and this was a life site project in Leeds, and this was done in Leeds Armley Museum, Mills and Museums and Galleries, and they allowed us to use their buildings as a learning source. So these are a few images of some of the participants that we got to learn how to, they were all studying architecture, by the way, and they learned how to use mix lime mortars and understand the materiality, and actually work on the existing building, of raking out and have a part of fixing the existing building. This is just a quick explanation of the difference between conservation, restoration and preservation. You can have a copy of all this, but you can see how, again, the different materiality and the lack of knowledge through time has actually accelerated the deterioration of these buildings that we've got. So learning how looking down into the actual details of how to mix things, and working with the people who are actually building as well. So being an architect you know, you've got to have an understanding of the construction process and who's involved in the construction process, because yes, you are designing the building, but you're working within a big team, and you've got to learn how to communicate, and everybody's got a specialism and everybody's got their own training. So it's learning how to do that, of respecting and having pride. So again, some more images from the summer school that we did in 2019, and this is open to anybody who's got an interest in construction and architecture and conservation. So this was about kind of giving tasters of the different roles within a project. Let me just quickly check my time. Okay. And you get to have a little bit of an insight to what other people do and what it actually means, you know, because as I said, training as an architect, it took me 10 years and I'm still training. It's not something that ever stops. You're constantly learning and you're constantly adapting with the time. So having a taster at such an early point in your life is quite, it's quite valuable, because you get to have a more of an understanding of what it is that you want to do. It's an investment of your time, and it's such a fantastic route into be a part of the built environment and these changes. So here's some, you know, learning how to map your routes through, learning how to survey a building, looking at the building from a different perspective and reading. And this is a different building that we went for a day, and you can see here that it's a different type of material. So it's a brick building where the other one was stone. We've got stone heads here, and the style of the building, the different types of windows. So you start looking at things in a different way, because you're looking at it in more, you're looking at it as a whole, but it's like understanding, okay, well, how was this built? Why was this built? It's right next to the water. Does the water feed the building in any way? And how you would actually put this building together to be able to understand how you would design it. So if you can physically do it, you can do it in your mind. And one of the first the presentations by Dr. Monica, she was talking about on-site, and you could see how the insulation was put together, and she's like, well, this isn't correct, because, you know, it's too loose, you've got these gaps, and that's what causes this reaction. Well, as an architect and a designer, you've got to be able to recognize that on site, because you're designing it, you're drawing it, you're working with others to specify it, and you're going to be going on site to check these works. So you've got to have an understanding of how that looks. So you can look at it on paper, but how does it look at it on site? So this was a way of getting people who are actually studying architecture and people from college who were looking at the built environment to have a taster of what it is actually to be doing the hands-on stuff and reading the building. So here we looked at actually repairing brick walls. So you can see the spalling of the brick. So spalling means that the face of the brick is starting to come apart and it starts to burst. And normally, you know, there's different elements that actually makes that happen. So it can be the quality of the material, but it also can be the type of mortar that you use around the bricks. So the mortar here and the pointing is the stuff that kind of goes in between the bricks. And if you use a harder material for that, then it causes, so the water's meant to come in and come out, and the bits in between the structure are sacrificial, which means that it's meant to take away, you know, that's meant to go away, and it's protecting the structure. If that bit in between is harder than the actual structural piece, which is the bricks, then the brick starts to deteriorate before the mortar. So it's actually, you've got to be careful in what you specify and understand the science behind it to enable that material to perform in the way that it's meant to perform. And then that acts as more of a whole as well. So one of the days that we got to go and go to the Leeds College of Building, which I actually went first of all, and we got to build a wall for half a day. And, you know, we built possibly like 3 or 4 courses, and it took us, you know, 4 hours. And you don't realize until you actually do it, it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of practice and skill, and to be able to have an insight into different skills, it's so rewarding because it gives you that appreciation for other people's roles as well. So what does life site learning provide? Well, we provide science, technology, engineering and maths. You know, architecture is a part of all of this, and how we transfer that into skills that you can learn. So it's just giving an insight into all these different things on-site experience. Another one that we've recently done is working with a charity called MAP Charity in Leeds, and this again was a listed building. And I'm going to start looking at this and start talking to you about actually how to identify and read the building in the built form. So you can see the facade of the building here. So the facade means the external, the frontage of the building here, and the fenestration. So the fenestration is the pattern of the holes in the facade, you know, so the windows, the doors. And so what we'd like to start looking at is, okay, well, how are the bricks laid out? What are the costs of the bricks? You know, because there's different types of where you stack bricks, and that can start telling a part of the story of the history of the building. So once you start understanding, oh, well, I can see that, what type of bond is that? Is that an English bond? Well, if it's an English bond, does that mean this? You know, so how is that wall constructed? And then you can start having more of an insight to how it's built. So we took some students here from both the college who were studying built environment and the university who were studying architecture, and some people who were just interested in architecture and construction came along to have a look at how do you actually read a building. How we looked at measuring, we looked at the different materiality, we looked at what's actually going on with the material and why is that happening. So this particular facade here, let's just take a moment, and I'd like you to kind of comment in the chat there of something that you'd like to identify. It's almost like a spot the difference. So let's look at this. So we've got it, what material is it made out of? So we can see it's bricks, and do we have any spalling? Yes, we have it here. There's a downpipe here. We have a gutter here. What's causing this spalling? Are these windows at the bottom different to the windows at the top? Is the materiality of the windows different? Well, we can see here that this is a plastic window where we've got timber windows here. In a listed building, are we allowed to put plastic windows in, UPVC windows in, and why? So these are the things that we need to start identifying. As soon as you can walk down the street and start having a look at, well, let's have a look at the material. Let's have a look at the sizes of the windows. The size of the windows on this floor is different to the size of the windows on that floor. Does that mean that the use on that floor was different to the use on the floor above? So it's starting to look at the building in a different way. And as an architect, it's what we do, because you've got to understand what's here to be able to get a grasp on designing something that's there for the future. And this is another architect, Rosita, and she had a go at just drawing a window and start looking at annotating these differences of materiality and looking at the different elements of the window. And this is a part of recording a building of the condition. And again, some students from the university. So this was done during COVID times. So, you know, we were outside, we were doing this, we had full protection measures on. So again, how does life site learning help? It gives knowledge, the experience, understanding of the building and the built environment. It also gives you an opportunity for networking, because you're getting people there, you're listening to people from earth building and line pointing, bricklayers, stonemasons, joiners, building surveyors, and understanding the whole idea of the construction process and who's actually involved. And for me, you know, I wanted to put this picture in because this is something that I did a couple of years ago. I was in Los Angeles, and if you haven't looked at the Eames house, it's a fantastic building, and it's I did a course in conserving modern architecture. So conservation is not just about you know, we need to think about what the definition of heritage is. Is modernism the new heritage? You've got different styles of architecture, different fashions, and that comes from style, time, era, materiality, availability, vernacular, and all these different things. And what we can start to do is actually have a look at what's more attractive in the built environment and where we are at the moment, and also having an understanding of what's been before and how we move forward. So I've just put a few useful links here for people if you would like to have more of an insight into on-site learning. Mark Womersley does a great YouTube video there, and these are some of the links that I've put on that you can actually get other experience if you wanted to go abroad when we're allowed to go and get that on-site experience. Let me just check. Okay, so I'm nearly running out of time, but I do have a few videos. Catherine, do you want me to play a couple of videos?
I think we might be coming up on time, but are you on Best Connect? I think I've seen you on there.
I'm not sure. I might not be, but I will make sure I am.
Excellent. If you jump over there, if you're happy to share your slides on there and share some of the videos, then teachers, careers leads, everybody can access those and get to see them and watch them and ask you some questions and things. And for everybody in the audience, if you've got questions for the amazing Michelle Martin, please, please, please ask your questions, because that was just such a brilliant journey of how archaeology is not just, I don't mean this to sound as dismissive as it's going to, but people think of architecture as being drawing pretty pictures, and that's lovely, but there's so much more to it than that.
Yeah, well, the thing is, there's different specialisms, different routes, and if anybody does have any questions, and I do have some videos if you would like, and I'll put that on the Connect thing. But thank you so much, Catherine, for organising this. It's such a fantastic cause, and we're always open and to any kind of mentorship. If anybody wants to get involved, then just let us know.
Wow, okay, that's an amazing offer. There you go, teachers, grab that one, because that's just phenomenal. And I think once we can start to go out and do things in the world again, getting involved in LifeSite and sort of participating in the events that you do and things is, as you've said and shown there in those photographs, such an amazing way to take theoretical knowledge and actually make it real. That building a brick wall, for example, is a lot more challenging maybe than it would seem.
Definitely. Anyone's welcome.